What if everything you've been taught about success, about ambition, about proving yourself to the world has been silently destroying you from the inside? For most of your life, you've been watching what other people are building, watching what other people are achieving, watching what other people think of you. And in that endless act of watching others, you stopped watching the one person who actually matters, yourself. In 2026, the noise has never been louder. Social media feeds engineered to make you feel small, comparison culture weaponized to steal your peace. Constant commentary on who you should be, what you should own, what you should become. All of it designed to pull your attention outward, away from the only battlefield that was ever truly yours. But nearly 2,000 years ago, a man who commanded the most powerful empire on earth wrote something in a private journal, a journal he never intended anyone to read. And in those pages, he left behind 7 principles that can end your war with the outside world and begin your conquest of the only world worth conquering. Today, you'll discover 7 Marcus Aurelius rules to build an unshakable self, one that cannot be rattled by opinion, cannot be broken by circumstance, and cannot be stopped by doubt. Watch till the end. The rule you skip might be the one that changes everything. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of legions, philosopher king. He ruled over 60 million people at the height of his power. He fought wars on multiple fronts simultaneously. He survived plague, betrayal, and the relentless weight of an empire that could fracture at any moment. And yet, when historians examined the private writings he left behind, what they found was not the diary of a conqueror obsessed with power. What they found was a man in a daily, disciplined, ruthless war with himself. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Read that again. The most powerful man in the known world, a man who could command armies, execute enemies, and reshape civilizations, told himself privately that his true power was never in the external world. It was always only within. That truth is more radical today than it was in 170 AD. Because in 2026, we live in the age of distraction. An age where your attention has become the most valuable commodity on the planet. Every algorithm, every advertisement, every manufactured controversy is designed for one purpose: to pull you out of yourself, to make you reactive, anxious, comparative, hollow, and most people comply. They spend their entire lives focused on what others are doing, what others think, what others have, and they die never having truly met themselves. This video is not for those people. This video is for the person who is ready to stop looking outward and begin the only journey that produces lasting power, the journey inward. In this video, we'll explore 7 timeless rules from Marcus Aurelius, rules drawn directly from Meditations, cross-referenced with Seneca's letters to Lucilius and Epictetus's Enchiridion, that will help you reclaim your attention, rebuild your identity, and forge a self so unshakable that no circumstance, no opinion, and no failure can destabilize you again. These are not motivational phrases. These are operational principles tested by history's greatest minds, and they are waiting for you right now. Let's begin. Lesson 1. The law of your own domain. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those who you yourself can improve." The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. But perhaps his most foundational instruction came in Book 3. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. This is where everything begins. Not with action, with understanding. The Stoics drew a firm, immovable line between 2 categories of existence: things within your control and things outside it. Your judgments, your intentions, your responses, your character. These belong to you absolutely. the opinions of others, the outcome of events, the behavior of the people around you. These belong to the world, and no matter how hard you grip them, they will never truly be yours. Most people spend 90% of their mental energy in the second category. They obsess over what someone said about them. They replay conversations trying to control how they were perceived. They exhaust themselves trying to manage outcomes that were never in their power to manage. Modern psychology calls this an external locus of control, the psychological state of believing your life is governed by forces outside yourself. Research consistently shows that people with this orientation suffer higher rates of anxiety, depression, and helplessness. They are not weak people, they are simply untrained. They have never been shown where the boundary lies. And the boundary is this: your domain begins and ends with your own mind. When you violate that boundary, when you send your attention into territory that was never yours, you give away the most precious resource you possess. Not money, not time, attention, focused, conscious, disciplined attention. Starting tomorrow morning, before you open any application, before you check any notification, before you give the world 1 second of your energy, sit in stillness for 5 minutes and ask one question: what is actually within my control today? Write down the answer. Everything on that list gets your energy. Everything not on that list gets your silence. Most people live their entire lives reacting to a world they cannot control. But you are building something different. You are building a domain, and a domain must have walls. The warrior does not charge in every direction. He holds his ground. He knows his territory. He defends what is his. That is where power begins. But knowing where your domain ends is only the first wall. There's a second principle that determines what you actually build inside those walls. Let's move to lesson 2. Less on 2. The discipline of not needing to be seen. Seneca wrote in Letter XX3 to Lucilius, "Gather and save the time which till lately has been forced from you, or filched away, or has merely slipped from your hands. Make yourself believe the truth of my words, that certain moments are torn from us, that some are gently removed, and that others glide beyond our reach." And in his most direct warning he stated, "It is not that I am brave, but that I know what is not worth fearing." That second sentence deserves your full attention. The hunger to be seen, to be acknowledged, validated, applauded, is one of the most devastating forces in a human life. And in 2026, that hunger has been industrialized. Platforms are built entirely around the architecture of external validation. Likes, views, comments, followers. Every number is a dopamine lever. Every notification is a tiny, manufactured proof that you exist. And people are addicted to that proof. They craft their image, carefully curate their story, strategically perform their life, all for an audience. And when the audience doesn't respond the way they hoped, they collapse. Their self-worth, which was never truly their own to begin with, fluctuates with the algorithm. This is not living. This is auditioning, indefinitely, for a role you will never fully get. Neuroscience reveals something profound here. Research from UCLA shows that social approval triggers the same neural reward pathways as food and physical pleasure. We are biologically wired to seek the tribe's acceptance. For our ancestors, tribal rejection meant death. The need for approval was survival. But you are not a cave dweller. And the tribe you're performing for today isn't your community. It's strangers. It's an algorithm. It's a curated fiction. Marcus Aurelius addressed this directly in Meditations. How much more harmful are the consequences of anger and grief than the circumstances that aroused them? What breaks most people is not what happened. It is their desperate need for others to see it differently. Here is the discipline Stoicism demands. Do the work when no one is watching. Make the decision when no one will ever know you made it. Hold the standard when the only witness is your own conscience. Do this for 1 week. Deliberately make a choice, a virtuous, disciplined choice. And tell no one. Post nothing about it. Share nothing about it. Let it exist purely between you and your own integrity. What you'll discover is terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Your sense of self will begin to shift from the outside in to the inside out. The man who needs the world to see his strength has never truly found it. But the man who acts rightly in the dark, in the silence, in the absence of applause, that man has forged something the world cannot give and cannot take away. You don't need to be seen. You need to be biled. But building in silence is only half the equation. The other half requires something even more difficult, something most people actively avoid. That is lesson 3, and it might be the most confronting principle in this entire video. Lesson 3, the ruthless practice of self-examination. Epictetus wrote in Enchiridion, chapter 48, the condition and characteristic of a philosopher is that he expects all hurt and benefit from himself. And in one of his most cutting observations, men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. For example, death is nothing terrible, for if it were, it would have seemed so to Socrates. For the opinion about death, that it is terrible, is the terrible thing. The most avoided room in any person's life is the room of honest self-examination. We are experts at seeing the faults in others. We diagnose, critique, and analyze the people around us with surgical precision. But when it comes to turning that same lens on ourselves, truly unflinchingly, without defense, most people flinch. They look away, they make excuses, they call it being hard on yourself, as though self-honesty is a form of cruelty. Marcus Aurelius spent every morning of his reign in a practice the Stoics called prosis, attentive self-awareness. He would examine his own thoughts, question his own motivations, and ask himself not, am I good, but am I honest? Not am I light, but am I aligned? The distinction is everything. Modern psychology has a term for the gap between who we believe we are and who we actually are. It's called the self-perception gap. And research from Tasha Eurich's work on self-awareness shows that while 95% of people believe they are self-aware, only 10 to 15% actually demonstrate the behavioral evidence of genuine self-knowledge. That means the vast majority of people are navigating their lives with a fundamentally inaccurate map of themselves. You cannot build an unshakable self on a false foundation. It doesn't matter how sophisticated the architecture. If the ground beneath is dishonest, everything above will eventually collapse. This is how you practice it. At the end of each day, not the beginning, the end. Take 10 minutes in silence, not journaling about what happened, not venting. Ask 3 specific questions. Where did I act from fear rather than principle today? Where did I seek approval rather than truth? And where did I choose comfort when I knew discipline was required? Answer them honestly. The discomfort you feel in answering them is not punishment. It is calibration. The warrior who does not examine his own wounds will fight through them and call it strength, but the wounds will slow him down. They will compromise his movement. They will eventually take him down, not from the outside, but from the inside. Self-examination is not weakness. It is the most powerful act of self-respect available to a human being. You owe yourself the truth. But here is where most people stop. They do the examination, they see the truth, and then they stay there, paralyzed by what they've discovered. Lesson 4 is about what comes after the truth and what you do with it that determines everything. Lesson 4, the armor of indifference to opinion. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations with searing clarity, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." And in Book 6, "Think not of what is missing, but of what you have. Then select the best of what you have and reflect on how eagerly it would have been sought if you did not have it." But the most armor-forging line in all of Meditations comes in Book 12. People exist for the sake of one another. Teach them then, or bear with them. Opinion, that invisible force that governs the decisions of most human lives. People choose careers based on what their family will think. They stay in relationships based on what leaving would look like. They silence their convictions because someone in their social circle might disagree. They wear clothes, drive cars, live in homes, and perform personalities, all based on the imagined commentary of people who are themselves too busy performing for others to ever truly observe anyone at all. It is a theater of mutual self-deception, and it is exhausting. Seneca named this with brutal precision in Letter 7. Retire into yourself as much as you can. Mix with people who will improve you. Let every day's intercourse with men make you stronger. The operative phrase, stronger, not more approved of. There is an enormous difference. The Stoic practice of indifference to opinion, what the ancient Greeks called apatheia, from which we get the word apathy, though the Stoic meaning is far more powerful, is not about not caring about people. It is about not allowing the fluctuating judgments of others to determine the stability of your inner world. Here is the fundamental test. If someone whose judgment you respect tells you that you've made a genuine moral error, can you hear that and grow from it? If yes, you are receptive. Now, if someone who doesn't know your values, your history, or your intentions dismisses you or criticizes you, does it destabilize you for hours? Does it pull your attention from your work? Does it change your decisions? If yes, then their opinion has become your captor. The practice is simple but difficult. When criticism reaches you, and it will, before responding emotionally, ask one question. Is this person's judgment based on genuine knowledge of my character and situation? If not, the opinion carries no information. It is noise. File it as noise and return to your work. And when praise reaches you, the intoxicating warm approval that feels like sunlight, ask the same question. Is this a genuine assessment, or is it flattery? The Stoics feared flattery more than insult. Insult can strengthen you. Flattery makes you dependent. Build the armor now. Not the armor that shuts people out. That is isolation, and it is weakness. Build the armor that keeps foreign judgment from penetrating your self-conception. Your identity is not a democracy. No one gets a vote. And if you think armor against opinion is your most powerful protection, wait. Because Lesson 5 is about something far more insidious than what others think of you. It's about what you think of yourself when circumstances turn against you. This is where most men fall. Permanently. Stay with me. Lesson 5. The Law of Voluntary. Hardship Seneca wrote in Letter 30 to Lucilius, one of the most radical passages in Stoic literature. Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? He continued, let the space of time that you thus devote to the toughening of your soul be neither short nor long. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, was telling his friend to practice poverty deliberately. This principle shocks modern sensibilities. We live in an era that worships comfort. Optimization culture promises you should sleep on the perfect mattress, drink the perfect coffee, optimize every hour for maximum productivity and minimum friction. The entire economy of self-improvement has been repackaged as a comfort delivery system. And yet, the Stoics understood something that neuroscience now confirms with empirical precision. The human nervous system adapts to its baseline condition. What you are comfortable with today becomes your minimum requirement tomorrow. Comfort, unguarded, becomes dependency. And dependency is the enemy of resilience. This is called hedonic adaptation, the documented psychological phenomenon where improved circumstances quickly become the new normal, and people return to their baseline level of satisfaction. The person who gets the raise is happy for 3 months. The person who buys the car is thrilled for 60 days. Then the nervous system recalibrates and the hunger returns for something bigger, something more. But there is a reverse effect to hedonic adaptation that the Stoics exploited deliberately. When you voluntarily remove comfort, when you introduce controlled hardship, you recalibrate your baseline downward. Suddenly, what you already have feels like abundance. Suddenly, the obstacles of daily life feel manageable. Suddenly, you discover that you are far more capable than your comfortable life allowed you to know. Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditations, Book 5, about the discipline of rising before dawn, not because it was required, but because it was harder than staying in bed. The act of doing the harder thing consistently was itself a training, not a metaphor, a practice. Here is your practice. Once a week, deny yourself one comfort you consider essential. Wake 1 hour earlier than necessary. Take a cold shower. Eat simply. Walk instead of drive. Sit in discomfort without filling it with distraction. Not as punishment, as training. You're teaching your nervous system that it can survive without what it wants. You are proving to yourself, empirically, in real experience, that the thing you feared losing will not destroy you if you lose it. And that proof changes you. Not philosophically, chemically, neurologically. You become less afraid, less reactive, less negotiable when life removes your comforts without asking. Most people wait for hardship to arrive and then struggle to cope with it. But you are different. You will choose hardship before it chooses you. And that single distinction is the difference between a man who is broken by the storm and a man who built his strength in every storm that came before. The forge does not apologize for the fire. The steel does not ask for gentleness. What comes next, Lesson 6, is perhaps the most misunderstood principle in all of Stoic philosophy. Most people hear it and mistake it for passivity. They are wrong. Dangerously wrong. Let me show you what it truly means. Lesson 6, the principle of amor fati. Love what is Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, that philosophers have wrestled with for centuries. Confine yourself to the present. And in Book 4, with breathtaking simplicity, loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. But the concept most fully expressed by the Stoics, later named by Nietzsche as amor fati, love of fate, finds its deepest roots in Marcus Aurelius's instruction in Book 6, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Amor fati, love of fate, not tolerance of fate, not acceptance of fate, not resignation to fate. Love, active, willing, philosophically grounded love of exactly what is happening to you right now as it is. This is where most people step back. They hear this and think, you want me to love losing my job, to love my relationship ending, to love betrayal, illness, failure. That sounds like surrender. That sounds like giving up. But you have misunderstood completely. Here is the distinction that changes everything. Accepting fate does not mean approving of what happened. It does not mean being passive in response to it. It does not mean you wanted it. It means you refuse to spend your most valuable resource, your mental and emotional energy, at war with a reality that has already occurred. What is done is done. The job is gone. The relationship is over. The diagnosis is on the paper. These facts are now permanent features of the landscape of your life. You can rage against them, which changes nothing and exhausts everything. Or you can orient toward them as the actual terrain from which your next move must be made. Seneca articulates this with characteristic sharpness in letter CV, i.e., omnia aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. All things are alien to us. Time alone is ours. Do not waste the time that is yours fighting battles with events that are already over. Modern clinical psychology has arrived at the same conclusion through decades of research. acceptance and commitment therapy, one of the most empirically validated psychological frameworks currently in use, shows that psychological suffering is not primarily caused by difficult circumstances. It is caused by our relationship to those circumstances, specifically by a cognitive process called experiential avoidance, the attempt to push away, deny, or control internal experiences that feel threatening. What the Stoics called amor fati, modern therapists call radical acceptance, and its effects on human resilience are measurable and profound. But let's be precise about how this is practiced, because theory without application is philosophy without power. When something unwanted arrives, and it will arrive, pause before reacting. Name what has happened factually, without catastrophic interpretation. Then ask not why did this happen to me, but what does this make possible? Every constraint creates a new direction. Every failure eliminates one path and forces your attention to paths you might never have considered. Every loss strips away what was not essential and leaves what is. Marcus Aurelius lost children, he endured plague. He fought on the Danube in brutal conditions while simultaneously managing an empire. He wrote Meditations, that extraordinary private journal, not in the comfort of a palace, but in military camps at the front, surrounded by death and difficulty. And in those pages, he never once complained that the world was unfair. He never once asked why it had to be this way. He asked instead, what does this moment require of me? Ask that question every single time. Not, why me? Not, this isn't fair. Not, I didn't deserve this. What does this moment require of me? And then give it that, completely. This is the unshakable self, not the self that never gets knocked down, but the self that, in the moment of impact, already knows what it will do next. The self that does not need the storm to be different. The self that becomes exactly what the storm requires. There is one lesson remaining before the conclusion, and I have saved the most important for last. This is the principle that contains all the others, the one that, if truly understood and truly lived, makes everything else not just possible but inevitable. Lesson 7. The imperative of becoming, your only true purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, Book 7. Confine yourself to the present. But in the passage that I believe is the most important in all of his writing, Book 10, he wrote something that should be carved above every door, every desk, and every mirror in every home. To the universe I say, whatever suits you, suits me. Nothing is too early or too late for me. That is in time for you. O nature, all that your seasons bring is fruit for me. All things come of you, subsist in you, go back to you. And then, with devastating intimacy in Book 4, how many a Chrysippus, how many a Socrates, how many an Epictetus have time already engulfed? He is asking the ultimate question, the one that underlies everything in this entire video, everything in this entire philosophy. When your time comes, and it will come, what will you have become? Not what will you have owned, not what position will you have reached, not how many people will have approved of you, validated you, applauded you. What will you have become? Because here is the brutal truth that the Stoics never softened and never apologized for. Most people are not becoming anything. They are maintaining, they are managing, they are surviving the week, recovering from the weekend, preparing for the next obligation. They are, in the language of Marcus Aurelius, sleepwalking through their days, technically alive, operationally absent. The concept of eudaimonia, flourishing, the highest good in Greek philosophy, was never meant to describe a feeling. It was never meant to describe a circumstance. It was meant to describe a type of person. A person who is in continuous, disciplined, intentional movement toward their highest possible self. Not perfect, moving, Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, who knew what it meant to have every external freedom stripped away, wrote in Enchiridion, chapter 51, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself, and in no instance bypass the discriminations of reason? You have been given the principles that you ought to endorse, and you have endorsed them. What kind of teacher, then, are you still waiting for in order to refer your self-improvement to him? You are no longer a boy, but a full-grown man. If you are careless and lazy now and keep putting things off and always deferring the day after which you will attend to yourself, you will not notice that you are making no progress. Let that land, a former slave, a man who possessed nothing material, telling his students with fire in his voice, 'You are not a boy anymore. You have the principles. You know what is required. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Not what circumstance are you waiting for, not what sign are you waiting for, not what permission slip from the world. What internal standard are you waiting to adopt before you commit, completely and without reservation, to the project of becoming the person you are capable of being? The imperative of becoming is not a weekend project. It is not a 30-day challenge. It is the orientation of an entire life. It is the decision, made every morning and renewed every evening, to move, however slightly, however imperfectly, in the direction of your highest self. And here is what that looks like concretely, because Marcus Aurelius was always practical. Begin each morning with what the Stoics called the morning meditation, a brief, honest review of the day ahead. What virtues will this day require? Patience, discipline, honesty, courage. Name the virtue before the day demands it. Become it in your mind before you are tested by circumstance. End each evening with the evening review. 3 questions. Where did I grow today? Where did I retreat? What does tomorrow require that I did not give today? Do this every day for 90 days, not as a habit, as a commitment, as a declaration. Because here is what Marcus Aurelius understood about becoming, and this is the most important sentence in this entire video, so I need your full attention. You will not become by thinking about becoming. You will become by the accumulation of moments in which you chose the harder right thing over the easier wrong one, by the accumulation of mornings you chose to rise, by the accumulation of opinions you refused to be enslaved by the accumulation of hardships you chose willingly, by the accumulation of fates you embraced without complaint, by the accumulation of honest self-examinations you refused to skip. It is not one grand transformation. It is 10,000 small decisions made in the direction of who you are becoming. The man who is unshakable is not the man who was never shaken. He is the man who was shaken repeatedly, violently, without mercy, and who chose each time to return to himself, to his domain, to his discipline, to his principles. That man is you, if you choose it. That is the 7th and final rule, and it does not end here. It begins here. These are not 7 ideas to consider. These are 7 weapons to carry into every day of 2026 and beyond. They will not make your life easier. They will make you stronger. And that is a far greater gift. Marcus Aurelius died in 180 AD on a military campaign, still in service, still in discipline, still in the work. He did not wait for a better time. He did not wait for peace, comfort, or certainty. He simply became until the moment he was no longer. You have that same capacity, the same equipment, the same choice in front of you right now in this moment. If this video reached something in you, something real, something that has been waiting, I ask one thing. Tap like, not for me, as a signal to yourself that you received this, that you are ready. Drop your commitment in the comments below. Tell me, which of the 7 rules hit you hardest? Which one do you need most right now? Write it down. Make it concrete. That act of writing is itself a Stoic practice. And if you are ready for more, If you want this kind of uncompromising, unapologetic Stoic truth every single week, subscribe. Because there is no shortage of work to be done, and we are just getting started. You are not built for comfort. You are not built for approval. You are not built for distraction. You were built for this. Become the master of your mind. Rebuild, refocus, rise.